Hey guys, tonight we're stepping into snow-soaked boots, creaky leather straps, and the unforgettable stink of 19th century warfare. You wake up stiff, half frozen, and already tired. Welcome to a typical morning in Napoleon's army. There's no glory here, no marching bands or triumphant flags, just mud lice and the sinking feeling that you probably won't survive this. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And let me know where you're watching from and what time it is where you are. I always love seeing how far this sleepy little army stretches. Now dim, the lights maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. Your eyelids are still heavy when the sergeant's voice cracks across the fog, barking something angry in French that you don't quite catch, but your legs already know it's time to move. You're lying in a makeshift bivouac, just a tarp stretched between two sticks, and overnight, it's sagged from the weight of melting sleet. Your blanket, a horse blanket, shared with another guy named Pierre, who snores like an old cannon and may or may not have fleas. You'll know soon. Your boots, the pride of the French infantry, are soaked through. The leather is stiff from yesterday's rain, and the inside lining, once a bit of straw, has turned to mush. As you sit up, a slow throb runs from your heels to your ankles. Those blisters. You haven't even stood up yet, and they're already reminding you who's boss. Around you, the camp stirs like a groaning beast. Someone curses. Another man sneezes violently into a filthy sleeve. Over to your left, two men argue about who stole the last dry sock. You pretend you didn't hear them because your own socks feel like cold sponges strapped to your feet. Napoleon's army may be known for its discipline, but discipline doesn't prevent trench foot. The march today will be another 20 miles, and no one has told you why. You're somewhere between Leipzig and nowhere with no map and no say in the matter. All you know is that you're expected to keep up, and if you fall behind, well, let's just say the last guy who did isn't here this morning. Historians still argue whether Napoleon's genius justified the human cost of his campaigns. But if they ever tried walking 10 miles in your boots literally, they might shift their focus to the sheer madness of marching logistics. Thousands of men, half-starved, blistered, limping, still expected to move like clockwork across Europe. Even the horses look like they'd rather join the other side. Your first task is locating your gear. Your pack is damp, of course. Everything inside, shirt, cartridge pouch, whatever remains of that tattered letter from home, is soggy and smells like smoked leather and regret. As you reach for your greatcoat, you notice the buttons have started falling off. Again, you consider sewing them back on, but your fingers are already numb, and the thread's a luxury you can't afford. Outside your tent, someone's singing, off-key, in Polish. It's oddly soothing. You step into the mud boots squishing, and the sky greets you with that bleak pale gray that seems to hover only a few feet above your head. It's not snowing yet, but the air has that sharp taste like the world is holding its breath. You hope breakfast will help. Spoiler, it won't. There's a part of you that thought army life would be, well, different. Maybe more heroic. You imagined honor medals, maybe a sweeping romance with a winsome French farm girl. Instead, your current romantic interest is a hunk of bread so hard it might qualify as a weapon under the Geneva Convention, if that existed yet. As the men line up, you see them trying to stretch cracking joints, wrapping scraps of cloth around raw skin. One guy has no boots at all, just wrapped rags. He's humming a lullaby, possibly to his feet. You try to ignore the smell. It's not one smell, but a bouquet. Wet wool horse manure, wood smoke, and something metallic you can't place, probably from the surgeon's tent. A captain strolls past, looking far too polished for someone who slept in the same mud. His coat is perfectly buttoned, his boots somehow shine. You wonder how. You also wonder if he knows what it's like to bleed through your socks. Suddenly, the drumbeat begins. It's slow, steady, and chilling. Time to march. Your legs protest immediately, but there's no room for complaints. The line begins to snake forward, a slow procession of shuffling misery. You follow, because what else can you do? You think about deserting briefly, but where would you go? You're somewhere in Saxony. You don't speak the language, and you probably get caught, or freeze, or starve, or all three. Instead, you focus on the ground in front of you. Step. Blister. Squish. Step. Blister. Curse. And somewhere in the distance, the sound of a bugle carries on the wind, haunting lonely, and a reminder that this is just the beginning of your very long, very cold day. Remember this moment, because tomorrow you'll look back at the blisters and think, ah yes, the good part. You don't get to sit. That's the first realization of the morning march. There is no pause, no rest, stop, no quick squat on a stump to adjust your boots. The officers trotting alongside on horses that somehow manage to avoid the worst of the ruts keep eyes like hawks on the column. Anyone caught dawdling is likely to get a not-so-gentle jab with the blunt end of a musket, or worse, singled out for some humiliating punishment later at camp. You're starving. Not the kind of, I skipped lunch hungry, but the kind of hungry where your stomach aches with a dull emptiness that makes your whole body feel cold. You reach for your bread ration, one thin chunk left in your sack, crumbling slightly, the edges hard enough to sand wood. It smells faintly of mildew and gun oil. Still, you bite into it. It's more dust than dough, more memory than meal. It sticks to your molars, dry and gritty, but you force it down. Around you, other soldiers are gnawing, sharing what scraps they've got. One man pulls a paper-thin slice of something that might once have been cheese from a handkerchief and offers you a corner. You take it. It tastes like smoke and Foot Locker. You hear someone behind you mutter, "At least it's not rat again." You don't ask for clarification. Historians often focus on the grand battles Austerlitz, Borodino, Waterloo. What they often skip are the 23 482 meals, in between many of which were either inedible or entirely imaginary. The French army had an official rationing system on paper, bread, meat, wine. But paper burns, and by the time it filtered through corrupted officers, pillaged supply carts, and roads choked with mud, what made it to your hands was whatever hadn't already been eaten by a passing goat. You think back to home, to actual meals, warm stew, butter. That one pie your grandmother used to make with apples and cinnamon, always a little too much clove, but it didn't matter. Now even the idea of an overcooked turnip seems divine. You reach into your sack again. There's a canteen half full cold water and a little mud from yesterday's fall. It's technically drinkable. You gulp. It's cold enough to make your teeth ache, but it helps the dry bread scrape its way down your throat. Someone 2 rows ahead sneezes violently, and no one flinches. Illness travels faster than rumors in this army. You've been lucky so far, just a cough, nothing serious, but the man to your right is starting to wheeze in a way that sounds wet. You remember something one of the old veterans said last night around the fire in a low voice almost to himself. The food doesn't kill you, the waiting does. At the time, you didn't understand. Now you do. Up ahead, there's a commotion. A wagon has tipped. 2 horses panic kicking wildly, and a man is thrown off his perch into the mud. The column doesn't stop. It just flows around the chaos like water around a rock. The man tries to stand. He's limping. No one helps him. You keep walking. If you help, you'll fall behind. And if you fall behind, well, you step over a discarded carrot bitten once abandoned. It's too filthy to eat now. You glance at it anyway. A joke floats through the ranks, passed mouth to mouth like smuggled wine. The food is so bad, even the rats are complaining to headquarters. It's not funny, really, but everyone chuckles because humor is the only seasoning left. Your belly grumbles again. The bread wasn't enough. The air smells faintly of smoke. Someone up ahead has gotten a fire going, probably boiling something, maybe coffee if they're lucky. But you're not stopping. Not yet. The drums are still beating. There's one man near you, old for a soldier, maybe mid-30s, with a thick beard and sad eyes, who somehow manages to walk and peel a turnip at the same time. You watch him slice off the skin with a tiny knife, delicately, like he's crafting art. When he finishes, he pops the pale flesh into his mouth and sighs like it's the finest meal in Paris. You wonder how he got that turnip. You wonder what you'd trade for one. One of your socks, maybe. The dry one. Maybe that ratty scarf. Maybe both. Historians still argue whether Napoleon truly cared for his men, or whether they were just pieces on a massive chessboard he played blindfolded. He famously marched with them, slept in tents, shared their rations, at least during the early years. But by now, 1812 or so, you're pretty sure he's got roast duck while you're chewing damp wood chip. Someone behind you farts loud, unapologetic, and immediately followed by laughter. It breaks the tension a little. In this army, even a bodily function can feel like camaraderie. The mud deepens as you crest a hill. Below, you can see the line of men stretching for miles, an undulating snake of gray wool, rusted bayonets, and sagging shoulders. Smoke curls from distant cook fires. A bell clanks dully from a supply cart muffled under canvas. There is no sign of the enemy. Just another hour, maybe 2. Then a rest. Maybe your foot squelches into something soft and not mud. You don't want to know. You keep walking, and all the while, your stomach keeps gnawing at itself, whispering the same thing over and over. You are not built for this. You start to lose track of time. There's no sun to mark the hours, just the same dull gray sky, stitched with smoke and low-hanging mist pressing down like a damp wool blanket. The rhythm of your feet becomes mechanical step squish grunt. Over and over again. You think of music. You think of silence. But what you really think of is stopping. The road isn't a road not anymore. It's more like a river of sludge that occasionally hardens into gravel, only to melt back into muck a few paces later. Your boots are starting to betray you. One sole is peeling away at the front, flapping faintly with each step, like a little leather tongue wagging in protest. The heel of your right foot feels like it's been sandpapered raw. You try walking on the edge of your foot for a while, but that just makes your calf cramp. A man next to you stumbles. He doesn't fall, just staggers sideways and catches himself. But it's enough to send a ripple of tension through the nearby ranks. No one says anything. No one needs to. Everyone knows the rules fall, and you risk being trampled. Stop, and you might not start again. The officer riding alongside barks something probably motivational, probably cruel. You don't bother deciphering it. His boots gleam. His horse snorts arrogantly. You briefly fantasize about trading places, about letting your legs dangle while the beast does the walking. But then you remember horses freeze too. Horses get eaten when things get desperate enough. You pat your own mount, your 2 blistered feet, and trudge on. Historians still debate how far Napoleon soldiers marched on average per day. Some say 20 miles. Others insist it was closer to 25. You stop carrying around mile 10. The man ahead of you drops his knapsack. Not dramatically, just a slow slip from shoulder to mud. He looks down at it, then keeps walking. He doesn't go back for it. That's the choice now. Carry less or carry nothing. The cold gets into your joints, knees especially. Every step is like a rusty hinge being forced open. You try flexing them at rest stops, but the rest is more a pause than a reprieve, just enough time to cough into your sleeve and curse your ancestors. You pass a mile marker, its numbers barely visible through a layer of moss and frost. You wonder how old it is. How many other armies have passed it? How many boots have struck the same ground, raised the same blisters? There's a brief moment of excitement ahead. Somebody thinks they see a village. You crane your neck, and yes, there's a shape on the horizon. Smoke maybe. Roof lines. A steeple. But no one cheers. You've been fooled before. Villages mean shelter. Or snipers. Or nothing but ruins and a frozen well. The sergeant calls a halt. Not long, just enough to check weapons. Bayonets are unhooked. Muskets are lifted and turned. Your own weapon feels heavier than ever, not from any damage, just from sheer fatigue. You've carried it for days. It doesn't feel like protection anymore. It feels like a burden made of splinters and iron. You slump to one knee just for a second, and your thighs scream. You imagine them puffing out their cheeks like exhausted marathon runners. You straighten back up, slow, deliberate. Everything aches now. You remember hearing once, probably from a grizzled old man in your first regiment, that Napoleon said a soldier's legs were more important than his gun. At the time, it sounded poetic. Now, it just sounds like something a general says when he's not the one limping. To your left, someone begins to sing. It's a soldier from the South Corsican maybe, and the tune is half hummed, half muttered. Something about wine and women. It almost sounds warm. A few others murmur along. It doesn't last long. The officer nearby gives them a glare sharp enough to cut, but it lingers in your head. That melody might be all you have to keep pace now. Then the clouds open. Not into blue skies, don't be ridiculous, but into sleet. It begins slow, like icy pinpricks, then faster. The road turns slick. The mud deepens. Someone slips and lands flat on their back. No one laughs. You try to pull your collar tighter, but the wind gets in anyway, snaking down your neck up your sleeves. You curl your fingers inside your gloves, trying to keep them warm, trying not to think of frostbite. You've seen what it does. Black fingers, missing toes. A man in your unit, Francois, lost his nose tip last week. He keeps trying to hide it under his scarf like no one will notice. You'd laugh, but your face is too stiff. Your mind drifts. Not home exactly. That's too painful right now. But somewhere imaginary. A bed with clean sheets. A pot of soup. A woman brushing your hair with her fingers. You don't know her face. You just invent it as you go. The sleet thickens. The trees on either side of the road look like phantoms, now thin and white and watching. Your breath comes in little gasps. Not panic, just the effort of walking with legs made of lead. Suddenly a shout up ahead. A warning, a command, you can't tell. Everyone slows. Then you hear it gunfire, just a crack. Far away. Another. Then silence. Nothing comes of it. Probably just nerves, or maybe some distant skirmish. Still, your heart starts doing that annoying thing, racing when it shouldn't. You grip your musket tighter. It doesn't make you feel better. And then as quickly as the panic rose, the column lurches forward again. March resumes. Feet in motion. Breath in clouds. You don't ask questions. You just move. By this point, even the pain in your feet feels like an old companion. Familiar, predictable. But you know it won't last. The worst is still ahead, because you haven't even reached the surgeon's tent yet. The smell hits you before the sight does an unmistakable cocktail of blood rot, old sweat, and burning cloth. The surgeon's tent. Or rather, the place where a canvas sheet flaps over a crude wooden frame, and men go in with limbs and come out with fewer. You inch forward with the rest of the column, trying not to look. But of course you look. There's a man laid out on a stained table, his face contorted in either pain or prayer. It's hard to tell. His leg is bare to the thigh, and next to him lies a bone saw already glistening. The surgeon's shirt sleeves rolled is humming. Humming. Like this is just another Tuesday. He has a helper, a boy barely old enough to shave, who's gripping the patient's shoulders while murmuring, "Hold still, mon frère. No anesthesia. Just grit teeth, bite down, maybe scream if you have the strength." Historians still argue whether the famous Napoleonic field surgeons were ahead of their time, or merely butchers with Latin names. You watch as the saw bites and the patient jolts, and something in your gut twists tighter than your bootlaces. You look away. You try not to imagine how quickly a blister could become an infection. How infection becomes fever. How fever becomes unconsciousness. And then, Then it's the table, the saw, the hymn. And maybe, if you're lucky, an assistant who remembers your name. They used to use brandy to dull the pain. Now they're out. One man swears he saw a comrade biting down on a bullet. Another saw a guy chewing wood until his molars cracked. You shift your musket to your other shoulder. It doesn't help the ache in your back, but it gives you something to do. A groan comes from the next cot. The man there is swaddled in bandages that have turned brownish gray. His eyes flutter open, then roll back. A chaplain mumbles something near him, crossing himself. You wonder if he's praying for recovery or preparing last rites. Maybe both. Your officer shouts, "Time to move." You shuffle past the surgeon's station like a funeral procession pretending to be an army. No one makes eye contact. Not with the wounded, not with each other. Just forward. Always forward. You hear someone behind you mutter, "Better to die on the field than live with a stump." You don't disagree. The mud seems stickier here. Maybe it's your imagination, or maybe the earth remembers. Every step pulls at your boots like it's trying to claim them. The wagon ruts are deep and lined with red-tinged puddles. You step over one, carefully trying not to slip. If you go down, if you twist something, if your knee locks, the tent is behind you now, but the memory follows. You can still hear the saw. You think about how war looks in paintings, men on horseback, waving flags, sunlight catching on sabers. No one ever paints the blood, or the flies, or the look in a man's eyes when he realizes they're cutting without waiting for him to pass out. You've seen paintings of Napoleon, of course. Always calm, composed, hand tucked neatly into his coat. No mud on his boots. No fear in his eyes. It's almost a joke now. You wonder if he ever walked this road. If he ever saw a man cry quietly because he lost 3 toes to frostbite and was too ashamed to tell his friends. You fall back into the rhythm of the march. One step, then another. Someone to your left starts humming again. You recognize the tune. It's an old folk song, something about a miller's daughter and a summer storm. It's completely wrong for this weather, which makes it oddly comforting. The man in front of you coughs violently, doubling over for a second before righting himself. He wipes something thick and red from his lips. You say nothing. There's a hill ahead. It doesn't look steep. But then again, nothing looks steep when you're upright. When your thighs are shaking, when your feet are numb, when your shoulders ache from days of weight, every slight incline feels like the Alps. You start up the hill, biting your tongue to focus. With each step, your breath gets shallower. You dig your musket's butt into the ground for support, using it like a crutch. Someone behind you groans, loud and long. At the top, you pause, not because you're allowed to, but because your legs demand it. You look back down the line. The men look like ants. Dirty, miserable ants crawling forward with more desperation than purpose. And in the distance, fog trees and smoke. Always smoke. You wonder what's burning now. Another shout. Another push forward. Another muscle you didn't know you had begins to throb. You wonder how many more miles. How many more limbs? How many more nameless men will pass through that surgeon's tent before winter ends, and for the first time today, you think about quitting. Not deserting, just sitting. Right here, right now. Letting the army march on without you. Letting the mud take you. Letting the war go on without your boots in it. But you don't. You move. Because somehow, the fear of stopping is worse than the pain of going on. You learn quickly that in Napoleon's army, hygiene is a private fantasy and a public disgrace. You smell yourself before anyone else does, but only just. The scent is a pungent mix of sweat smoke, wet wool, and whatever's growing in your socks. There's no real way to clean anything. Not your hands, not your underclothes, not your soul. You'd give your left boot for a bath, even a cold one, even just to stand in a stream. But it's been days since you saw water that didn't already have a dead leaf or something worse floating in it. Your last wash involved snow and silent weeping. The latrines are a shared horror. They're not even holes anymore, just muddy trenches with logs thrown across them if you're lucky. There's no privacy, no modesty, just a line of tired men squatting in silence like philosophers of filth. The moment you sit, the cold bites you in places you'd rather not name. Someone next to you groans not from pain, but from poetic despair. This, he mutters, is where romance dies, and you believe him. Lice, don't even ask. You stop counting. You stop caring. They live in your seams, your hair, your socks. You've even named a few. One particularly bold fellow seems to have taken up residence behind your ear. You consider charging him rent. Historians still debate the impact of disease on Napoleon's campaigns. Typhus, dysentery, and scabies often killed more soldiers than bullets ever did. Napoleon himself once remarked that a sick army is a dead army, but then again, he wasn't the one sharing a blanket with a guy who smells like boiled cabbage and panic. One night, you try to shave using a broken mirror shard and half a blade. You cut yourself 3 times. The blood freezes almost instantly. You give up and let the beard grow wild. It itches, but it's something to do. You try to keep clean, really. You use bits of cloth to wipe your armpits. You brush your teeth with a twig. You chew fennel seeds when you can find them. But it's like putting perfume on a corpse. A noble effort. Pointless. One evening, a group of you try something radical laundry. You strip down to your shirt and dunk it into a puddle that vaguely resembles water. You scrub with ash and sand just like the veterans say. It helps. For about 10 minutes. Then you put the damp shirt back on and realize you've made a terrible mistake. The cold seeps in instantly. You shiver for an hour. The lice return within the day. You once heard that, in the Emperor's personal guard, the men got soap. Actual soap. You wonder what that feels like. You imagine rubbing it between your hands until it foams. Then you remember you've forgotten what foam feels like. At some point, you find a comb. It's missing half its teeth, but it's better than nothing. You run it through your hair and pull out a tangle of lice straw and something that might be a breadcrumb. You keep the comb like treasure. It feels civilized. There's a guy in your unit who insists he used to be a barber before the war. He offers to trim your beard with a knife. He's kept sharp and clean. wrapped in cloth, rubbed with vinegar, protected like it's a family heirloom. You let him. He gives you a quick swipe, nods solemnly, and says, "You look like a corpse with purpose now." You take that as a compliment. The smell of the army is something you never quite adapt to. It clings to you, seeps into your coat, your breath, your dreams. At night, you lie there in your blanket, listening to the wind rattle the tent flaps, and you imagine your body as a slow burning candle of stink. And yet, there's something weirdly bonding in it all. Everyone smells. Everyone's filthy. There's no shame because there's no exception. You look at the guy next to you covered in soot and God knows what, and you think, at least I'm not alone. Someone in the next tent over starts singing again. A lullaby this time. Soft in a cracked voice. You close your eyes and imagine it's someone singing to you while washing your hair. You don't even remember your mother's face anymore, but you give her the voice just the same. Your last clean pair of socks is gone. They were dry once. You think about them more than you'd care to admit, like a lost pet or a lover. You pass a frozen stream. You stare at the ice. You think about breaking it washing your hands. But what's the point? The next fire you stoke will fill them with ash again. The next crawl through mud will undo any effort. And so, you march, filthy, smelly, human in the most uncomfortable way possible. Because in Napoleon's army, dirt is democracy. And today, you're just another citizen. You're not a poet, but something about trying to write home under a sky that looks like wet wool makes you feel oddly philosophical. Or maybe just desperate. It's been weeks since you last tried to write. Your fingers were less stiff then, and your hopes a little warmer. You dig the letter out of your pack. It's crumpled, smudged, and slightly torn like you. The paper is damp from the weather, or from your own sweat, or both. It smells faintly of leather and smoke, and the ink has started to blur where your fingers gripped it too tightly. You stare at the blank space where more words should go. Dear Mother, that's how you began. 100 times now. And every time you stop there, what do you say? That you haven't eaten a real meal in days. That your bunkmate talks in his sleep and cries for someone named Elise. That you've learned how to tell the difference between frostbite and trench rot just by smell. The quill you borrowed from a corporal is dry. The ink froze last night. You try warming the little inkwell in your hands, cupping it like a fragile bird, but it's no use. You dip anyway, scrape the quill against the paper, and pray. Nothing. Eventually, you chew the end of the quill in frustration and settle for charcoal from a burnt stick. It writes barely. The letters look jagged, haunted. Like a ghost is holding your hand. You write slowly. I'm still alive. It's all you can manage without crying. And crying in this army is something you save for the latrine trench. You try to add more. My feet hurt. I dream of bread. Tell Josephine the scarf she knitted now wraps my musket instead. Sorry. Each line gets darker. Not in tone, literally darker. The charcoal smudges under your hand, leaving fingerprints like tiny bruises across the page. Historians still debate how much of Napoleon's success relied on propaganda. on controlling what made it home, what didn't. The letters they collected are filled with forced optimism, rehearsed glory. You wonder how many were true. How many men wrote, "We are victorious," with frostbitten hands, while burying their friends under 6 inches of snow. The man beside you is sketching, not writing drawing. He's an old Alsatian with an eye for detail and a habit of mumbling to himself. He shows you the paper. It's a scene of the camp, bent trees, crooked tents, smoke swirling into a sky too heavy to move, and a tiny figure squatting over a fire, grinning despite it all. You point to the figure. "Is that me?" He shrugs. "Could be. Could be any of us." You don't know whether to laugh or cry, so you do neither. You try again with the letter. "I think of you every night before I sleep, which is never long enough. I miss the smell of fresh bread. I miss not being cold." You pause. Then you write the most honest sentence, "Yet I am not brave." The words sit on the page like a confession. You underline them once, then cross them out lightly. You don't want to lie, but you also don't want to be remembered as weak. You hear a distant boom, not thunder, artillery practice, or maybe not practice. You fold the paper. It's damp soft around the edges. You tuck it into your pack, wrapped in the driest scrap of cloth you can find. Will it ever reach France? Will it ever reach anyone? Hard to say. But now it exists. A piece of your soul on scorched paper. At the edge of camp, a courier rides past. His coat is clean, his boots polished, his satchel stuffed with letters. Yours won't be among them. You consider chasing him. Just for a second. Just long enough to shout, "Take this." But your legs hurt. Your pride hurts more. You stay seated. Another soldier drops beside you, arms, crossed breath, steaming in the air. Writing home, he asks. You nod. "Don't bother," he says. "By the time it gets there, the war will be over. Or we will." He laughs. You don't. Still, you keep the letter. Because it's not really for them. It's for you. A reminder that once you had words, that once you believed someone might read them. Night begins to fall. Slowly, as if even the sun is reluctant to spend another minute in this camp. The air gets sharper. The ink freezes again. The quill cracks. The fire dies. You tuck the letter deeper into your coat. Maybe it will be read. Maybe it won't. But for tonight, it's enough to know that somewhere beneath the lice, the cold, and the stink of unwashed clothes, you are still trying to speak. You've been marching for days, maybe weeks. Time blurs when every sunrise looks the same. But today, something in the wind feels different, sharper, hushed. You notice it first when the birds stop singing, as if nature itself is holding its breath. Then you hear it a crack in the distance. Not a branch, not wind. Something intentional. Something watching. You freeze without realizing it, one boot halfway into a puddle. Around you, others pause too. No commands, just instinct. Your musket's already in your hands before you consciously reach for it. Enemy in the trees, someone whispers. It's not a shout, not even panic, just fact. The way you might say rain's coming, or the bread's gone bad again. Your eyes scan the woods lining the road. Bare branches streaked with frost. Nothing moves. But now, your brain is working against you. Every shape becomes a shoulder. Every shadow, a barrel. You crouch slightly, not trained, just afraid. Historians still debate the role of irregular warfare in Napoleon's downfall. Whether the scattered bands of Russian partisans, Spanish guerrillas, and German scouts were a mere nuisance or a genuine strategic threat. But you're not a historian. You're just a guy squinting into the trees, praying no one takes a shot at your head. There's another crack closer this time. You duck. So does everyone else. No bullets fly. Just the echo of a warning shot. Or a tree limb breaking. Or your nerves unraveling. Keep moving. The officer ahead shouts. Easy for him to say he's on a horse. You obey. Your body moves on its own legs, stiff shoulders, hunched eyes darting. You try to look casual, like you're not completely convinced someone's aiming at your chest from behind a birch tree. The road curves. The trees thicken. You're entering the worst possible place, a bottleneck. If there are enemies here, this is where they'll strike. Your grip tightens on your musket. It's heavy clunky, and you realize you've never actually fired it in battle. Practice, sure. A few shots in a field. But this is different. This is real. You scan the faces of the men around you. Some are pale. Some are too still. One is quietly murmuring a prayer in a language you don't know. Then something moves. A figure, quick, just between the trees, gone before you can shout. You blink. Did you imagine it, or did you see that you whisper to the man beside you? No, he says quickly. Too quickly. But he tightens his grip too. Someone starts coughing up ahead, harsh and desperate. It echoes through the column like a slap. The wind picks up. Leaves dance. Branches creak. And suddenly, every sound is suspect. Is that a squirrel? Or a scout? A twig snapping? Or a trap being sprung? Your feet keep moving, but your mind is screaming. What would you do if the trees erupted in musket fire? Drop, run, freeze, scream. Would you even have time to decide? The fear isn't loud, it's quiet, steady, like water dripping inside your skull. You pass a fallen tree. Its trunk is split open the wood, inside gray with age. Perfect place to hide. You glance once, twice. Nothing. The man ahead of you mutters, "If I get shot today, I hope it's in the foot." Why the foot? Because I'm tired. I'd love to sit down for a week. You almost laugh. A few officers fan out toward the woods, muskets raised. One has a spyglass. He looks for 5 seconds, then shrugs. Either he saw nothing, or he doesn't want to be the one who panics. You realize something: you are not the hunter. You are the hunted. Your bright blue coat, so dashing in portraits, makes you a walking target in the woods. Your marching column is loud, predictable, exposed. And whoever's out there, they know this road better than you ever will. You think of the stories you've heard: scouts getting picked off one by one, patrols disappearing overnight. A soldier waking up to find the man next to him gone bedroll soaked in blood. You told yourself those were exaggerations, campfire tales. But now you believe everyone. You reach for your canteen, just a sip. Something to stop your hands from shaking. It's empty. Of course it is. You keep moving. The road widens slightly. The trees fall back. The tight knot in your chest loosens, but only a little. The column doesn't stop. You pass no bodies, no blood, no shots are fired. Maybe it was nothing, or maybe they were there the whole time watching. The worst part, you'll never know. And so you keep walking, watching the trees, because you're not sure what's scarier, the enemy in the forest, or the moment you stop expecting them. The wind stinks of damp wood and wet horse. You're starving again. No surprise there. And tonight's culinary miracle is a piece of meat you're praying used to be horse and not something worse. You're not alone. Half the camp is hunched around fires like cavemen, every pot boiling over with hope, desperation, and questionable ingredients. You've managed to scrounge up a tin cup, a bent fork, and 2 sticks to hold your pot above the flame. The pot A, blackened mess tin that once belonged to a man named Louis. Louis didn't make it past last week. You didn't ask how. The pot still works though. In it, a chunk of meat the size of a clenched fist, brownish gray, with sinew. You found it wrapped in an oiled cloth near the back of a supply wagon. Technically, it was unclaimed. Technically so is your dignity at this point. You crouch low, feeding the fire like a priest coaxing spirits from the underworld. The wood is wet. It sizzles more than it burns. The smoke curls into your face, stings your eyes, and sticks to your clothes like regret. Someone behind you coughs loudly. Another curses. A third bursts into laughter for no clear reason. You stir your pot with a bayonet. Probably not recommended. Definitely not sanitary. But nothing about your digestive system is sanitary anymore. A veteran named Duroc sits nearby, gnawing on a strip of what he calls jerky. It looks more like a belt than a meal. He chews with grim dedication. Chew long enough, he says, without looking up, and it stops tasting like sadness. You smile, sort of. Historians still argue whether Napoleon's supply chains were brilliant innovations or logistical disasters. In theory, his armies lived off the land. In reality, they lived off boots bark and anything that didn't fight back. Foraging, they called it. Looting, if you were on the receiving end. You once heard about a man who boiled his own gloves. Leather soup. He didn't die of hunger technically, but the intestinal distress was legendary. Your meat bubbles. The smell is meaty, maybe even good. You dare to hope. Then it slips off the stick and drops into the fire. You stare at it, sputtering, crackling, hissing in the coals like a dying rat. Duroc leans over and says, 10-second rule doesn't apply in war. You fish it out anyway. Blow on it. Scrape off the worst. Pretend it's fine. The first bite is rubbery. The second bite is ash. The third tastes vaguely like sadness and hooves. You eat every scrap. Nearby, another fire erupts into shouting. Someone knocked over their pot. Someone else kicked someone's elbow. A scuffle begins. Not serious. Just hunger, making men thin-skinned and stupid. You stay out of it. Instead, you sip hot water from your tin cup and call it broth. You lie to yourself. It's got flavor. It's nourishing. It's not just burnt snow. You pretend to believe it, and that's enough for tonight. The fire crackles gently. For a moment, it's almost peaceful. Then come the rats. They slink in from the shadows, fat and bold. They know the drill. Camps mean scraps. They dart between boots, nibble on spilled gruel, chew through sacks. One climbs onto a sleeping man's blanket. He swats blindly, muttering in his sleep. You throw a pebble. Miss. The rat stares at you, unimpressed. You sigh. Throw a second pebble. Hit it. It squeaks and bolts. Victory. Someone offers you a piece of stale hardtack. You accept it like it's cake. You chew slowly, carefully, like eating gravel with manners. Above you, stars poke through the smoke. You lean back just a little and stare. You used to love stargazing. Now the stars just make you cold. A man starts singing again. The same song from earlier, the one about the miller's daughter. This time, he adds a second verse. Something about longing and soup. The melody is warbling and flat, but oddly beautiful. The group around the fire is quiet for a while. Then someone whispers, "Do you think they're eating better tonight?" No need to explain who they are. Everyone knows Napoleon, the marshals, the generals. The ones in dry tents with real pots and proper meat. You don't answer. Neither does anyone else, because silence tastes better than envy. Eventually, you scrape the last charred bits from your pot and lick your fingers. You wrap the mess tin in your scarf, still faintly scented of bay leaf and gunpowder, and tuck it under your coat. It's worth more than gold right now. You lie down near the fire feet, toward the flame arms crossed over your chest. It's not warm, just less cold. The wind whistles between tents. A distant dog howls. Somewhere, someone throws up. Probably the belt jerky. You close your eyes and dream of dinner rolls. The rumors spread before the man does. Whispers flutter through camp like startled birds. He's here. The emperor rode past the southern flank. I saw his hat. Napoleon. Your ears perk up even before you realize it. It's not reverence. It's not awe. It's something quieter, curiosity mixed with exhaustion. You've marched, starved, frozen, and boiled leather in his name. Now, you want to see the man himself. Just once. Just to know he's real. The call goes out, form up. Not for battle. For appearance. Officers bark orders and adjust uniforms. Suddenly, you're smoothing your coat, tucking and fraying edges, trying to look less like a scarecrow and more like a soldier. The man next to you is rubbing mud off his cheeks with a scrap of tunic that smells like boiled soup bone. It's a futile effort, but we all try. You line up, shoulder to shoulder, weapons cleanish. back straight, blisters ignored. You swallow hard and stand tall the way they told you in training. Chin up, eyes forward, knees quietly screaming, then hoofbeats. They echo across the road, muffled by mud but unmistakable. A cavalry guard rides past, first tall, polished, not a speck of dirt on them. Their horses are sleek and steady, eyes sharp. You instinctively step back half a pace. The guard doesn't even glance at you, and then he appears. Napoleon Bonaparte, not a giant, not even tall. In fact, you have to look twice to confirm which man is him. No golden glow, no trumpet fanfare, just a short, solid man in a gray greatcoat and a bicorn hat that makes his head look oddly shaped from behind. But somehow, he commands gravity. He doesn't wave. He doesn't smile. He scans. His gaze slides across the ranks like a sword being drawn. Eyes cold, calculating quick. They say he remembers faces. You hope he doesn't remember yours in this state. He rides slowly past. Your heart pounds. Your boots feel like they might melt into the mud. For a brief second, his eyes meet yours, or maybe you just imagine they do. You stiffen. You try not to blink. Then he's gone. Historians still argue whether Napoleon's charisma was true magnetism or clever myth. Whether men followed him because they loved him, feared him, or simply believed no one else knew what they were doing. But standing here, muddy, hungry, half dead, you understand something the books don't say. He looks like he belongs in war. The column relaxes slightly after he passes. Some men whisper. One says his boots were clean. Another mutters, "Of course they were. He doesn't walk." Someone else just shrugs. He looked tired. You wonder if that's true. You wonder what he dreams about. Glory, maps, roast chicken. You sit on a log tug at the laces of your boot and exhale through your nose. There's nothing different about today, except that now your misery has been witnessed by an icon. You're still cold, still hungry, still missing 3 toenails and a sock. You ask Duroc, "What do you think he saw?" Duroc spits into the fire. "Not us," he says, and maybe that's true. Maybe Napoleon looked across the rows and saw shapes, not men. Potential, not pain. Numbers, not names. Or maybe he saw everything and just didn't flinch. You think back to something you overheard once whispered between 2 officers. He knows how to win, not how to weep. Still, you don't hate him. Not exactly. Because for a second, just a second, you stood a little taller. You remembered why you came. You remembered the songs, the posters, the speeches. You remembered that you were supposed to be part of something big. And then the firewood snapped in the pit, and your knee started throbbing again, and someone shouted that the soup was gone. Back to reality. As night falls, someone ties a red scrap of cloth to their bayonet and waves it around, imitating the emperor's hand gestures. Laughter bubbles up in tired coughs. The impression is terrible. The mood is better. You think maybe morale isn't about comfort. Maybe it's just about proximity. about knowing the man behind the myth stood close enough to smell the same fire you did. Maybe that's enough. The wind picks up. Tents rustle. Somewhere, an officer's horse neighs and stamps the frozen dirt. Someone starts softly singing again. You don't join in. You're staring at your hands. Rough cracked, streaked with soot and meat grease and ink. You wonder if Napoleon's hands ever looked like this. You doubt it. The worst hour of the day isn't the march. It isn't even the half-burned soup or the latrine pit. It's the night watch. You draw the short straw tonight. Again, the sun is down, though it hardly made a showing today, and the cold is already creeping into your bones. It starts in the fingertips, climbs into the wrists, then slithers up your arms like some malevolent fog. You pull your greatcoat tighter, but it's like wrapping yourself in a frozen towel. Useless. Your post is at the edge of the bivouac, just past the last row of tents. A line of dead trees stretches out ahead, their silhouettes jagged against the dim sky. Beyond that darkness, real, heavy, unsettling darkness. The kind that watches back. You shift from foot to foot to keep the blood moving. One foot crunches on something, probably a bit of frozen bread from dinner. You don't dare eat it now. You're alert, not desperate, yet. You grip your musket like it's a staff. It offers no warmth, no reassurance, just wait. You wish it would hum, or glow, or say something useful, like, "Don't worry, no one's out there." But it doesn't. It's a long, cold stick of iron and fear. There's a sound to the night watch you don't hear in the day. It's not silence. It's a hum. Distant breathing horse snorts the flapping of tent canvas, the wheeze of someone having a nightmare. And underneath it all, your own heartbeat thudding like a drum against your ribs. You look left. Look right. You see nothing. But your mind sees everything. A bush trembles. Was that wind? A twig snaps. Was that a deer? Or something slower, smarter? Historians still argue whether enemy scouts regularly crept this close to French camps. Some say no, it was suicide. Others claim dozens of men vanished each week, snatched by ghostly hands in the dark. You don't care who's right. You just don't want to be one of them. You try humming a tune. Soft. Just enough to keep your teeth from chattering. It helps a little. Not much. Time crawls. You glance at the moon. It hasn't moved. You check again 5 minutes later. Still hasn't moved. You begin to suspect the moon is mocking you. Behind you, a man coughs in his sleep. Another mumbles something, perhaps a prayer, perhaps a recipe. You envy him. He's horizontal. He's dreaming of potatoes or lovers or both. You are awake entirely, every nerve tuned to its own private violin string. You think you hear whispering in the trees. Not voices, just the suggestion of them, rustling like breath against bark. You grip the musket tighter. You swallow hard. Your breath fogs in the air, curling around your face like a dying ghost. Your nose is numb. You can no longer feel your left earlobe. Congratulations, you are now 80% frost and 20% regret. To pass the time, You count the stars. You lose track after 30. You start again. You try reciting a poem you once knew. You forget the second line. You start again. At some point, you hear footsteps. Soft. Crunching. You freeze. You listen. The sound stops. You slowly raise your musket. You squint. Nothing. You wait. Still nothing. Then movement. It's a squirrel. Fat, furious, and very late to its winter burrow. It glares at you like you're the intruder. You exhale your breath, escaping in a relieved fog. Evening, you whisper. It doesn't respond, and just like that, you're laughing. Quietly. Bitterly. The sound of your own voice startles you. It's been hours since you used it. Maybe days. You almost forget where you are. Then you remember you're on night watch. You don't get to forget. Eventually, finally, mercifully, someone appears to relieve you. A younger man with red cheeks and too much optimism. Cold one, eh? He says. You just nod and hand him the musket. You don't have words left. As you shuffle back to your patch of mud and blanket your joints, scream. Your feet feel carved from wood. Your ears are useless. But your mind, oh, your mind is still very much awake. Too awake. You lie down. Pull the coat over your face. Curl into a half ball. You try not to think about the trees, or the squirrel, or the scouts, or the fact that night will come again tomorrow, and again, and again, and maybe next time, it won't just be squirrels. You wake up in darkness again, not because someone shook you, not because a drum sounded, but because your body knows. The cold pressed into your bones overnight like a second skin, and something inside you just gives in. You try to move your toes. Nothing. Panic flutters in your chest for a moment. You rub your foot through the sock. It feels like meat that's been left out too long. No sensation. No wiggle. Your stomach knots. You switch to the other foot, same thing. You sit up slowly, teeth clenched. The world spins slightly. You cough. It sounds like old leaves. Someone nearby is shivering violently. Another is groaning in their sleep. You glance around. The fires have gone out. The embers are buried under snow. You dig a hand into your coat, fumbling for a crust of bread you stashed in your inside pocket. It's hard, cold, damp. You don't care. You chew slowly, and it tastes like old wool and ashes. You chew anyway. Eventually, you get your boots back on. It's like shoving frozen fish into leather tubes. They don't fit properly, not anymore. The swelling is worse. One toe might be black. You don't check. You already know. You stand. A mistake. The world tilts. Your vision blurs. Your legs wobble. For a terrifying moment, you think you're going to fall face first into the mud. Then it passes. Barely. Historians still debate whether frostbite or dysentery claimed more lives in Napoleon's retreat from Russia. But you've seen what frostbite does. The graying skin, the stiff limbs, the slow march toward amputation. You'd take a bad stomach over a black foot any day. Your breath hangs in the air like a foggy accusation. You shuffle toward the line, one boot dragging slightly. No one comments. Everyone is limping now. You pass a soldier sitting on a log, staring blankly at his hands. He's holding his gloves, not wearing them. He doesn't seem to notice. You nudge him. He blinks once, twice, then shivers back to life. There's a smell in the air again. Smoke. Burning fat. And under it, all the sour reek of fever sweat. One of the younger recruits is lying against a wagon wheel, his face too pale, too still. A sergeant checks his pulse, shakes his head, says nothing. The boy will be buried under 6 inches of snow before noon. You shuffle on. There's no real breakfast. Someone passes you a tin cup of warmish water with floating flakes of something, maybe barley, maybe candle wax. You sip it anyway. The warmth feels like a miracle. You hear someone mutter, "I had a dream last night. I was at home. I had a real bed." You nod, too tired to answer. Another voice. This one. Raspy. "I dreamed I had toes." That earns a laugh. A dry, awful, painful laugh. The kind that echoes in your chest long after it stopped being funny. You cough again. It rattles. You wonder if it's just a cough or if it's turning into something worse. Your breath tastes metallic. You check your fingers. Still pink mostly. That's something. You pass a tent where someone is having fever dreams. He's talking to his mother, or maybe a horse. You can't tell. In the distance, the sky lightens. Not a sunrise, just less darkness. A smoky gray that passes for morning. A man falls in the snow. No one helps him up. Not out of cruelty, out of protocol. If he can't stand, he can't march. If he can't march, he stays. You don't even know his name. You glance at your hands again. They're shaking. Not from fear, just from fatigue, or hunger, or cold. Probably all three. A veteran near you mutters, "This is the part where men turn into ghosts." You don't ask what he means. You feel it. In your bones. In your teeth. In the part of your mind that used to hold joy. You haven't laughed in days. Real laughter, not the bitter kind. You can't remember the last time you felt warm, or clean, or safe. And yet, you keep moving, because what else can you do? You trudge through the slush, past the body of a horse, past the wreck of a supply cart, past your own shadow, stretched thin on the snow. You wonder, when did this stop being war and start being survival? You don't have the answer. All you know is that you can't feel your toes and that the march isn't over yet. It begins with a sound you'll never forget, deep, distant, and unmistakable. A slow rumble like the earth clearing its throat. Then comes the sharper crack, the one that punches your ears and rattles your bones. Cannon fire. The first few shots are far off. Just warnings, maybe. But the next salvo lands closer, and your officer starts shouting. That's when you know this isn't a drill. This isn't one of those tense, almost battles where everyone glares across the field for 3 hours and then goes back to camp. This is it. You move fast, but not gracefully. You fumble for your cartridge pouch, your flint. You drop your bayonet curse, pick it up with numb fingers. Your musket feels heavier now, as if it too is aware of what's coming. A line forms. Men to your left and right snap into place. Some look grim. Some look terrified. One is whispering a prayer, lips barely moving. You remember the drill, load, aim, fire, reload. You've done it 100 times. But that was practice. That was with straw dummies. This is different. Another cannon booms. Dirt flies up 20 paces away. The shock wave hits you a second later, a soft punch to the chest. You try to breathe, but your lungs feel tight. Your ears ring. Your hands sweat despite the cold. Fix bayonets, comes the cry. You hesitate. The man beside you doesn't. His blade clicks into place with a practiced snap. You fumble yours, forcing it onto the muzzle until it locks with a sharp clink. You're now officially a porcupine. The officer ahead raises his sword, his face pale but focused. He looks back at you all, at the line of tired men, stiff with cold and fear, and gives a single nod. Then he shouts, "Advance!" You step forward. Mud sucks at your boots. Smoke curls ahead. The trees are thin here, offering no cover. You see shapes in the haze. Blue coats. Gray smoke. Movement. Gunfire erupts. You flinch. A musket ball zips past your head with a sound like ripping cloth. You duck instinctively. Someone to your left drops. No scream. Just gone. You don't look. You raise your musket. Aim. Fire. It kicks back harder than you expect. Your shoulder screams. You can't tell if you hit anything. The smoke swallows everything. Reload. You fumble with powder and ball. Your hands shake. You spill half of it. You try again. More gunfire. More cannon. A flash of red ahead. Maybe a uniform. Maybe blood. Historians still argue about the effectiveness of line infantry tactics. The neat rows, the synchronized volleys, the elegant formations, all lovely on paper. In practice, it's chaos. Thick smoke, deafening noise, and the constant fear that your next step might be your last. You fire again. This time, your musket misfires. A hiss instead of a bang. You curse and begin the reloading process all over again, now hunched and praying no one sees you unarmed. Someone crashes into you from behind. Not an attack, just another soldier stumbling. You both fall into the mud. Your musket gets dirty. You wipe it on your coat. It doesn't help. You stand. Fire. The gun finally goes off. The enemy is still out there somewhere in the smoke. You hear screams now. Not battle cries. Not heroic charges. Just pain. Raw and immediate. You want to run. Not far. Just far enough. But you don't, because no one else is. And in this moment, being alone is scarier than being dead. Another cannon shot. This one lands closer. Your ears ring. You blink and everything feels distant for a second, like your body forgot how to be solid. You shake your head. Keep moving. A man ahead of you is clutching his shoulder. Blood seeps through his fingers. He's crying, loudly. You've never heard a grown man cry like that. You pretend not to notice. You don't have anything to give him. You step over a body. You don't know his name. You don't stop. The order comes. Fall back. You're not sure who gives it. Doesn't matter. Everyone hears it. Everyone obeys. Retreat doesn't mean safety. It means more running, more smoke, more shots. You turn and move half running, half limping. Your lungs burn. Your musket feels like a boulder in your arms. Behind you, the battle still rages. You don't look back. Eventually the noise fades. The smoke thins. The cannon fire grows distant. You collapse by a broken wagon, gasping, sweating, cold. Someone nearby says, "We made it." You look at him. He's missing an ear. You don't correct him, because maybe you did make it, at least for now. You always imagine retreat would feel like relief. It doesn't. It feels like shame, strapped to exhaustion, wrapped in mud, and wrapped again in snow. There's no order to it, no formation. Just men scattering like leaves in a storm, some with weapons, some without. No one talks. They grunt, pant slip, fall, get up again. No one helps. Not because they don't care, but because they can't. You run until your lungs burn, then stumble until your legs give out. Then you walk. Somewhere behind you, the enemy is still advancing. Cannon fire still thunders now, and then just often enough to remind you they haven't forgotten. A cart lies overturned in the ditch, its wheels still turning. Blood splattered across the side like spilled paint. 2 boots stick out from beneath it. You don't check to see who they belong to. The road becomes chaos. Broken wagons, dead horses, discarded gear. You step over a musket still warm. You don't pick it up. You already have one. You don't know if it works. Someone screams in the woods. Then silence. Then a gunshot. You keep moving. Historians still argue about Napoleon's retreats, whether they were disasters or strategic withdrawals, whether he was coldly pragmatic or simply overwhelmed. But out here, retreat doesn't feel like strategy. It feels like running away, and hope in the sky collapses before your lungs do. A soldier ahead of you trips over a corpse. He throws up. You keep walking. Another stumbles beside you and mumbles, "Do you think they'll follow us all the way to Paris?" You don't answer. You don't know. A wagon wheel spins slowly in the mud. A child's doll lies nearby. No one questions how it got here. Nothing makes sense anymore. Your feet are soaked. Again. Your socks, if you're even wearing both, feel like wet seaweed. Your toes have gone beyond numb. You don't check them. You just hope they're still there. Someone ahead slips and falls flat. His musket lands across his back with a sickening thud. He tries to stand. His leg buckles. He reaches out. You step around him. You don't want to. But stopping now means losing the momentum that's barely keeping your body upright. He doesn't cry out. He just stops trying. You hear a whistle. One of the officers rallying what's left of a company. His voice cracks as he shouts orders. No one listens. You pass a makeshift stretcher. 2 men, hauling a third, whose chest is wrapped in a blood-soaked coat. The wounded man hums a lullaby through cracked lips. He's bleeding from the nose. His eyes are open but unfocused. "Keep going," the bearer mutters, mostly to himself. "Keep going. Keep going." The phrase settles in your brain like a drumbeat. Keep going. Keep going. Another mile. Another ridge. Another broken bridge crossed on wobbling planks. Your knees buckle once. You catch yourself on a tree. You want to sit, just for a second, just to rest. But you don't. Because the second you stop, you might not start again. You think about home, the smell of warm soup, the crackle of a fireplace, the feeling of shoes that fit. You blink hard. You can't afford to cry. The tears would freeze anyway. Someone passes you with a limp. His coat is gone. He's wrapped in a saddle blanket. His fingers are blue. He mumbles a prayer that might also be a joke. You can't tell. You nod to him. He doesn't see it. You pass another man sitting against a tree head tilted to the side. He could be asleep. He isn't. A few paces later, a pile of discarded rifles, 20 or 30. Some snapped in half. Some just dropped. You wonder how many of their owners are still walking. Or if they traded weight for speed. Or if they knew they'd never need them again. The snow starts again. Light at first, then heavier. You squint against it. Your lashes freeze. You press onward boots, crunching in rhythm with your shallow breaths. One man near you collapses to his knees. Another tries to lift him, then gives up. They both sit there side by side saying nothing. You don't stop to listen because you're still alive. Barely. But alive. And if you stop, you might have to admit how close you are to not being. So you retreat past the trees, past the broken road, past the last body you'll let yourself notice, until the only sound is snow crunching under your boots and the echo of a single truth in your head. This isn't a retreat. It's survival with no destination. You're not sure when you started recognizing graves by shape alone. At first, they were formal rows of wooden crosses, names carved, uniforms folded atop. But that was weeks ago. Now, they're barely more than humps of snow-covered earth, disturbed dirt, with a cap or glove sticking out, a bayonet planted like a marker. You pass one every few dozen paces. Some fresh, some frozen, so hard the ground couldn't be dug more than a few inches. There's no ritual, no words, just a quick burial, if there's time, and if not, well, the snow does the rest. You don't stop to look at faces anymore. That was the old you. The one who still thought you'd get through this with stories to tell. Now, you barely glance at the corpses, because too many of them look like you. And one day, someone will pass your body without stopping either. The snow falls heavier. It piles softly on shoulders and helmets, erasing outlines. You could fall here and in a few hours blend into the landscape completely. Like you never existed. You walk past a mound with a hand sticking out, blackened, fingers curled. The rest of him is buried. You don't want to know who it is. You press forward, gripping your coat tighter. A man behind you says, "I heard they buried the general in a wine barrel." You grunt. It was all they had. You nod. It sounds plausible. In this army, death comes fast, and barrels are everywhere. Wine is not. Historians still argue about the mortality rate of the retreat. Some say half the army perished. Others say more. But they're counting heads on paper. You're counting hats in the snow. Sometimes a pile of uniforms burns in the distance. Too frozen to bury. Too risky to carry. Fire is the only option. You watch the smoke rise and wonder if that's what you'll become, ash and steam. And a vague story someone tells over cheap beer back home. You pass a spot where someone tried to build a cross from 2 sticks tied with bootlaces. It's crooked, charming in a way, a final little act of humanity. You stare at it longer than you mean to. Then you keep moving. Another soldier trips and lands face first in the snow. He doesn't move. Someone pokes him with a stick. No response. They keep walking. You do too. It's not cruelty. It's math, time, momentum. If he's dead, he doesn't need help. If he's not, he'll catch up, or he won't. You shuffle past a ditch filled with broken gear, muskets, boots, a shattered drum. No bodies here. Maybe someone cleared them. Maybe the wolves got them. You don't think about it. You think about shoes. Yours are holding together with twine and stubbornness. You've stuffed them with straw. The straw is now wet. Your toes are now ice. You think of a joke. What did the soldier say when offered new boots? Is the coffin extra? You don't laugh, but your mind repeats it again anyway. Ahead, a man kneels by a grave. Not his own. He's muttering something, maybe a prayer, maybe a recipe, maybe both. He places a strip of cloth red, torn from a sash, at the mound's edge. Then he rises, straightens his back, and rejoins the line without looking back. You admire him, or pity him. It's hard to tell which. You reach a hill. Small, but your legs are done negotiating. You climb it one step at a time. At the top, you see a wide field, flat white, broken only by scattered trees and the faint dark lines of the retreating army. In the distance, smoke curls from what used to be a farmhouse. Someone probably burned it for warmth, or shelter, or spite. You exhale. You can't feel your fingers. Your lips crack when you try to speak. So you don't. Your breath floats upward. You watch it as if trying to remind yourself, I'm still here. More graves line the base of the hill. Fresh ones. Maybe 6. Maybe 10. You don't stop counting anymore. You just acknowledge them. Like old neighbors, one of the sergeants ahead plants a bayonet into the snow upside down. A sign, a warning, a memorial. It doesn't matter. Everyone sees it. You pass it without a word. Your coat flaps in the wind. Your face stings. Your eyes are raw. But you're still upright. The line continues. Silent. Shivering. Disappearing into the trees ahead. Like a ghost army barely human anymore. And somewhere behind you, beyond the graves, the ruined carts, the frozen limbs, is a version of yourself you don't recognize and don't want to. At some point in the late afternoon, though time stopped, meaning anything, you realize you're not marching anymore. You're drifting. Your legs move, but your mind is somewhere else. Not in France. Not even in your body. Just floating like smoke, rising from the last dying ember in a soldier's fire. You barely notice when the man beside you collapses. He makes no sound, just folds at the waist and disappears into the snow. No one reacts. No one breaks step. The column absorbs the moment like it's another breath, another blink. You're still here, for now. A tree branch snaps above you. Just the wind. But you flinch anyway. Your nerves are frayed. Your hearing comes and goes, impulses first a sharp ring, then nothing but the crunch of snow beneath boots, then wind, then silence again. Somewhere behind you, a voice shouts something in a language you don't recognize. No one turns around. Someone coughs behind you, deep, wet final. Still you keep walking. Historians like to romanticize this part of the story. They talk of iron discipline, of the will to survive. They don't talk about how your legs move without permission, how your thoughts dissolve like sugar in boiling water, how your name starts to slip from your own memory. You see a tree up ahead, tall, skeletal, alone. You don't know why, but it feels like a marker. You tell yourself, if I reach that tree, I'll stop. You reach it. You don't stop. A little further on, a man is sitting cross-legged in the snow, his hands tucked under his arms, head bowed. At first, you think he's praying. Then you realize he's frozen. His face is peaceful. You pass him without slowing. You pass many more, boots jutting from snowbanks, packs abandoned, a trail of blackened fingers, a blood-stained scarf, a musket snapped in two. You barely register them now. You have no more space inside you for grief. Your world narrows to three things. Breathe. Step. Don't fall. That's it. The sun drops behind the clouds. What little of it there was. The light fades to a dull blue. The wind rises. It howls like a dog left out in the night, chasing you down the path. A man ahead collapses. This time, a younger soldier tries to pull him up. He strains, then gives up. He doesn't speak. He just walks on. You watch the younger man's shoulders slump under the weight of that failure. Then you lose sight of him in the dusk. Somewhere far ahead, a horn sounds. Not loud, not triumphant, just a single low note. The kind of sound they'll say was nothing later. Just wind, just a hallucination. But you heard it. You don't know what it meant. You keep walking. Snow begins to fall again. Not heavy. Just the lazy, spiraling kind that makes everything feel slow and quiet. It dusts the brim of your hat, settles into the creases of your coat, and melts against your face with icy kisses. A soldier behind you whispers, "This would be beautiful if it weren't killing us." You want to agree, but your mouth is too dry. Your jaw won't move, so you nod. A fraction. A deer darts across the path, up ahead. Just a shadow. Graceful. untouched by war, untouched by you. You envy it so completely, your chest aches. You pass another body. This one has a name tag still sewn to the jacket. You don't read it. You don't need more names. You reach the edge of a copse of trees. The column stops briefly. Some are told to dig in. Others are told to keep moving. You're in the latter group. You want to protest. Not out loud. Just in your mind. But the order already passed through you. You keep walking. A thin figure in a tattered coat passes you going the other way. Maybe a scout. Maybe a deserter. You both glance at each other, but don't speak. You wonder if he saw his own grave and decided to walk the other direction. You reach a shallow ditch and step over it without breaking stride. You realize you're not cold anymore. That's not a good sign. You tell yourself it's just numbness, just adaptation. But you've seen the look in men's eyes before they lie down just to rest. You've heard the slurred words. You've seen the stillness. You blink. Hard. Keep walking. The trees thin again. Campfires flicker on the horizon. Not many. Just enough to paint orange splotches on the snow. You think, if I reach that fire, I'll sit down. Just for a moment, you do. You drop beside. It muscles cramping in protest. You hold your hands out. They don't warm. The fire is too small. Or your body's too far gone. But you're still breathing, still here, for now. And so, here you are, a flickering flame, a stolen breath, a quiet heartbeat in the snow. The world around you has faded into soft edges. The fire crackles beside you, but it's distant now, like a memory of warmth rather than the thing itself. Your limbs are heavy, your thoughts slow, but oddly calm. There's no more fear, just stillness. You close your eyes for a moment, not to sleep, not yet, but to feel the silence inside yourself. The ache is still there, yes, but now it feels like something ancient, something shared. You are one of thousands, tens of thousands, a ghost among ghosts, a whisper in the long story of war. And somehow that feels peaceful. The snow continues to fall, gentle, steady, wrapping the world in hush. You picture your home not perfectly, just hints. The smell of wood smoke, the creak of a door, the sound of a spoon scraping the bottom of a pot. Someone is calling your name. Or maybe it's the wind. You don't answer, not out of fear, out of rest. Let the footsteps fade. Let the drums fall silent. Let the boots and blisters and broken rifles be carried away by time. You've done enough. You are enough. And now, you can sleep. Sweet dreams.